Привет. Перед началом видео хотел пожелать приятного просмотра.
The first story, I have a fear of spiders because of a hunting trip I took with my dad and family when I was a kid. I don't enjoy shooting things. Not an animal rights activist, but I think killing for game or bragging rights and not for food is wasteful and barbaric. I had brought my Game Boy, and they stationed me at one of the ground blinds so I could use the radio to tell the others if I saw any deer headed their way. I'm sorry, I can't help with that request. I considered running like hell, but I had no idea where the camp was. I had been driven out to the blind. My solution was to use my can of off and the lighter from my backpack to blowtorch all the spiders off. Because stupid. That's why. The plan backfired, because I made the mistake of standing downwind of the spiders. The second the fire hit them, they all let go and flew at me. The entire wall of them, flaming, flying spiders. I immediately started screaming and rolling around on the ground. I took off all of my clothes and immediately phoned my dad on the radio and told him to come get me and that we were going home. I have never sworn or cried so profusely in my life. I eventually went through therapy regarding this event, and now I just hate spiders in general and prefer not to be around them. The second story, I met a person with legitimate arachnophobia for the first time. I met a woman, and we began talking and eventually started dating. When I first went over to her house, I noticed that she parked her Lexus out in front of her house when she had a 2-car garage. I asked her why she did this. It's a very nice car, and I would want to keep it in the garage rather than on the street. She went on to describe to me that she is deathly afraid of spiders and that she saw a couple spiders in her garage once and hasn't gone in the garage in over a year and a half. Naturally, I didn't believe her, and I thought she was being hyperbolic. But as our conversation went on, I realized that she was telling the truth. I asked her if it was okay if I went into the garage. I have absolutely no fear of spiders, save for a black widow or a brown recluse. So I wanted to see what these few spiders looks like, or what kind they were, if they were even there at all. When I went into the garage, it was like walking into a fake haunted house. The garage was covered rafter to floor in huge, thick cobwebs and spider webs. It was spooky beyond imagination. This woman's garage was beyond infested with I don't know how many variations of spiders. But this is all because she simply closed the door and never went back in there. I told her that a few bait traps and some bug spray would have prevented all this, and that I understand now why she doesn't go in the garage. I had a spider in my hand, which was just a harmless little black spider. And I opened my hand and showed it to her, and I kid you not, this woman recoiled in absolute horror, fell over her coffee table, and ran into her bathroom and locked the door, and stuffed a towel under the door, screaming at me the whole time to get the fuck out of her house. I just stood there completely shocked. I simply could not believe what I was seeing. I eventually left after about 20 minutes of trying to get her to come out, and we didn't talk for a week. When we did talk again, she very kindly broke everything off, stating that my inability to see her arachnophobia as real would be an issue. And that was the end of everything. In my life, I have never seen a person react to a completely harmless spider like that. Her reaction scared me more than the garage. I mean, she was in a state of absolute and pure terror and panic like I've never seen before. You would have thought someone was coming at her with a knife. So there's that. The third story. Just a spider story changing the course of lives. Wanted to share. My sister and I were both super into nature when we were younger. Neither of us afraid of bugs or spiders. We wanted to touch and learn about every animal we saw. My parents stopped me from trying to capture and handle the black widows on the underside of our house siding in SoCal loads of times when I was young. Anyway, one pivotal moment was, at least my first memory of, handling a bold jumping spider. We found it in our house. I must have been 5 or 6. My sister was 7 or 8, and we were both handling it. I specifically remember it because it was the first time we had looked at a jumping spider under a magnifying glass, as my dad had just gave us one of his old ones. We were blown away by the hairs, the metallic greenish-blue chelicerae, the huge eyes. It really was a significant moment in my now long history of bug loving. Kind of like the first conscious wow moment I had with them. I'm not sure exactly what triggered it. I imagine she accidentally squeezed it. Not too surprising considering we were children handling a spider. But the bold jumper bit the tip of my sister's finger. I remember her screaming and flailing, crying for at least an hour or 2 afterwards. After that, she had a horrible fear of spiders, bugs, and did not want to be around any sort of arthropod on the whole. This, in turn, kind of turned into a full-on pullback from liking nature and the outdoors as the years went on. To this day, 25 plus years later, she is still deathly afraid of spiders and bugs, and just isn't really a nature enthusiast at all. I, on the other hand, grew up to become an entomologist. Just kind of wild how one singular event like that, especially at a young age, can alter someone's entire worldview and shape their personality well into their adult life. And on the flip side of that, how the same event really stoked a growing interest into something I've carried with me for the rest of my life and turned into a career. Not really a consequential tale or anything, but just wanted to share. TLDR, my sister got bit by a spider when we were younger, and it turned into a lifelong phobia. The fourth story. Last night, my girlfriend went to put the dog out. But before she does, she checks for spookies, looks for critters or wildlife in the backyard. We live in a rural area, and my dog is both old and stupid. She says she spots eyeballs, but can't tell what it is by the fire pit. I look, but can't see it, but she swears up and down. I put on boots and grab a stick and a flashlight, and halfway, I can see an eyeball reflection. I think it might be a baby bunny or a possum. It was big-ass wolf spider crawling around on a log around my fire pit, and she saw it from about 250 feet. The fifth story. So when I brought my laundry bag inside, I dumped it out on the floor and saw a spider running from laundry bag. I grabbed a cup and paper. I was relieved to see it was just a jumping spider. I still would have released it. When I took it to my porch, I gently lifted the cup. Instead of it running off immediately, it looked around slowly and lifted its head and looked me. I felt like it looked directly in my eyes, then wiggled its little pedipalps a bit. It was so awesome. I sat there until it went under my stairs. Unfortunately, I didn't get a photo of it because it all happened so fast. It was a pretty light brown and gray, with a few small dark brown accents. It was little smaller than a dime. Its butt was pretty large, so I wonder if she was also a pregnant little Spidey. All in all, it was such a cool experience to have. The sixth story. I was on a mission trip in Guatemala, staying in a Mayan village. There was no real plumbing and very little electricity. The bathroom was just a little wooden shed out in the yard with a giant pit covered with a wooden box with a hole cut in it. One night, I had to pee before going to bed. As I was walking to the shed, I saw hundreds of little pinpricks of orange and green light all over the yard. In the beam of my flashlight, they were in the trees and bushes and all around on the ground. When I go to the shed and pushed open the door, I saw a spider the size of my hand sitting on the seat. I stared at it with my flashlight, and it did that little twitchy spider movement thing as it slowly turned around and looked up at me. I just stared at him for a few more seconds before saying, "Yeah, no," and walking away. I peed in a bush instead. The worst part of the whole ordeal was when I was staring the little guy down. I realized that his eyes were very reflective green and orange. In other words, all the little twinkling dots I had seen while walking out there were actually spider eyes, literally everywhere. I'm normally not afraid of spiders. Just the other day, I picked up a little house spider in my English class and took her outside. I even have a spider that lives in the corner of my bedroom because he keeps the bug problem under control in the summer. But this was a huge and unknown creature in a tropical jungle somewhere. I was supposed to sit my naked. Spiders are our friends, but no, just no. The seventh story. When I was driving to work one Monday morning, a large spider, body was nickel-sized, whole thing was a bit over an inch across, crawled down onto my windshield from the upper left corner where the window meets the roof. It was right above my head, and I was lucky I didn't crash right then and there. I managed to pull over and tried to grab it with tissues, but it had disappeared. Now, I have a spider phobia, so I was near hyperventilating. But I was able to get back into the road and finish driving to work. I was afraid the whole time it would pop out and land on me. I was scared driving my car after that. 3 days later, on a Thursday, I was again driving to work, and it popped out again from the same place right near my head. I literally shrieked, and instinct took over, and I grabbed the tissues next to me that I hadn't put away in case it came back. Grabbed it, still don't know how I did that. Spiders terrify me, and threw it out the open window. Then I hyperventilated and cried and laughed the rest of the way to work. I don't even care that I littered. I hope the car behind me ran it over. The eighth story. Not long after my wife and I bought our first Mazda, we got a recall notice. We Googled the recall notice and discovered that there was a situation where a certain type of spider was attracted to the smell of chemicals in a fuel tank hose. So they crawl into the hose, set up nests, and the nests block flow, causing the fuel tank to crack and start a fire. So, the worst day in your life might look like you're driving your new car home from work when it starts to lug and lurch and stall. You pull over onto the side of the freeway. Suddenly, the car catches on fire. As you're unbuckling yourself, hundreds of baby spiders come crawling out of the dashboard and vents and all over you as they try to escape the fire. The ninth story. When I was about 5, I woke up in the middle of the night and heard my mom in the living room. Unbeknownst to me, she had killed a wolf spider and was hunting down the mate. I walked into the middle of the room with my bare feet, right as the spider ran across the floor and straight for me. I recall my mother screaming at me to get on the couch, but it was too late. I vividly remember the feeling of that large spider running across my feet. That single incident caused a lifelong terror of arachnids. The 10th story. I live in Australia, so have many, but this one stands out. Was sharing a taxi with friend, and we're just happily chatting in back seat. I suddenly notice there's this tickling feeling on my chest. I look down to see big, fat, hairy spider legs sticking out of my shirt. I scream, flick the spider, which flies through the air, landing on my mate's face. she totally loses it, starts screaming and flailing about. Taxi driver pulls over, yells at us, and kicks us out. The 11th story. I barely encounter spiders, but my worst one was when I was going to have a shower and I saw the shower curtain moving, saw the spider's legs, put a towel on, and went screaming to my brother and mother. My brother grabbed a milk bottle and got the spider in that. Harthrin put the lid on it and put it outside in the bin. Later that night, my brother screamed and came out and grabbed a tissue. Turned out that another spider, the same size, was in his room and crawled on his face. The 12th story. When I was around 6, my dad squashed a spider on the hall carpet. Then either was too lazy to pick it up or couldn't find it in the pattern. A little later, I came along and somehow my chewing gum dropped out of my mouth. I spotted something gray and squidgy looking, put it in my mouth, and began chewing. I don't need to tell you what it was. The 13th story. Picture it, Florida, 2002. I was alone after my shower in a long bathrobe, naked underneath, jamming to some Sting. My entertainment center was open in the back, so you could see the wall behind the TV. I was dancing around as one does alone when from the corner of my eye, I see movement behind the TV. First thought is palmetto bug. Nice way to say cockroach in Florida. So I wait a beat, and then it creeps slowly up the wall. A wolf spider the size of my palm. Panic sets in. I am naked under this robe. I run to put boots on and struggle to find a weapon. Moving slowly, room to room, always watching it creep higher behind the entertainment center. I decide on a broom, but I know this is not enough. The 14th story. When I was in college, I had a girlfriend who was terrified of spiders. Now, I don't want them crawling on me, but I'm okay with them. We walked out her front door once, and a huge spider was wandering around the front porch. She was freaked out and wouldn't leave the house. Feeling very studly, I walked right on out there and stomped on the spider. The spider splatted, but hundreds of baby spiders scattered out in every direction. The 15th story. One day, I was drinking some coffee and I felt a texture on my tongue. I thought maybe it was just some coffee grounds that had somehow made it past the Keurig. Nope, was a spider corpse. Apparently, it had somehow crawled into the machine, maybe lived there for the night, then got boiled and dispensed into my cup. Really don't recommend putting a dead spider on your tongue. The 17th story. While sitting on the armchair in the lounge room one night, I felt a quick feather-like feeling upon my knee. I looked away from my phone to see a huntsman spider the size of my palm. It was just chilling. I stared at it. It stared back. It was like a standoff, and we both knew it. I was significantly larger, but this 8-legged giant arachnid had the power. It was in control here without even knowing it. Until that one little twitch. The moment it readjusted a leg, I took my chance. With a sweep of my hand, I went to swipe it off of me. But I was foolish thinking that would work. Oh no, it did not work. Instead of swooping the spider off of me, like I had originally planned, it avoided my efforts of defense and ran over my lap. In a state of panic, I jumped up and ran to the other side of the room and started furiously hitting at myself, thinking it was still on me. It was not on me. Instead, I saw it rise from behind the armchair on the wall and disappeared under the mounted wall decoration of a boat. The 18th story. When I was probably around 12 or 13, I was sitting on the living room floor watching TV with my family. All of a sudden, I see something fly across my thigh. I look around, but whatever it was is gone, and I assume my mom had thrown something at me as a joke. I rolled my eyes and kept watching TV. Next morning, I get out of bed and see a squished spider where I had been laying. It was a spider! It crawled in my shorts! I slept with a spider in my shorts. It still makes me shudder in horror. The 19th story. My 3-month-old puppy was curious about spiders all the time. He pounces on them and tries to eat them, but usually just loses interest. One day, I'm sitting on the couch, and he comes up and plops his head down on my arm and goes to sleep. A couple minutes later, I feel something tickling my forearm. I watch a huge, slobbery spider crawl out of my Shar-Pei jowls, leaving a trail of drool and broken legs. It took me a couple weeks to shake the image of him being some kind of zombie dog. The 20th story. So a few years back, I moved in with my now ex, then fiancé, and her family, and was getting ready for bed the very first night after fully moving in. I wore basketball shorts because it was a hot night, and we slept without the blanket. This is all relevant, trust me. A few minutes into sleeping, I felt a tickling sensation on my leg, similar to an itch, but not quite. In that moment, I felt the greatest chill climb up my spine and started violently kicking both my legs like I was a world-class Olympic swimmer going for gold. The whole while my fiancé is asking me what's wrong and looking very confused. Finally, once I feel comfortable that my frantic kicking has killed whatever demon was touching me, I hop out of the bed and look down at the completely flattened brown spider on the bed. I had kicked it until it was a literal pancake. This spider suffered absolute hell in its last moments. Anyways, take it out into a more lit area and look up what kind of spider it was. Fiancé's family has all kinds of books about different animals and insects. And find out that the spider was a brown recluse spider, as in one of the only 3 spiders in North America that would actually require medical attention and can cause necrosis to the surrounding area of the bite. I lived in that house for a year, never wore shorts to bed again. The 21st story. I drive my son to soccer practice, and when I stop the car, a big huntsman spider crawled onto the passenger side window. As my son got out of the car, the spider crawled inside the car and onto the inside of the windscreen, heading towards me. I dived out of the car and onto the dirt. The spider disappeared. After looking everywhere in the car and not finding it, I assumed the spider must have crawled out of the car. As we headed for home, the spider crawled out from behind my windscreen wipers and clung to the windscreen. The faster I went, trying to get it off, the lower it made its center of gravity. Finally, when I parked the car at the supermarket, the spider climbed up the windscreen and onto the roof. As we came out of the supermarket, I didn't see the spider, so again I thought it had gone. But as I lifted up my door handle, there it was, and it scuttled over my hand and again onto the roof of the car. Again, I hoped it would fall off the car as I drove home. It was nowhere to be seen when I got home, thankfully, so I thought that was the end of it. So a few days went past, and I was out catching up with people, forgetting all about the spider as I was leaving, and went to my car. I got into the driver's seat, and just as I put my hand behind the steering to start the car, the huntsman came striding out from the instrument display and into the dash of the car right in front of me. It was all too much, and I went back inside to ask someone to help me get it out of the car. 3 manly men came out, and one managed to flick it out with his baseball cap, and then, much to my horror, he stood on it. After a few days of surfing my car and surviving all my travels, I was actually sad its life had come to an end. The 23rd story. I was at a shower party for my cousin's wedding at what can definitely be described as a fancy venue with decor, tablecloths, and chaircloths. This gigantic black spider with very long legs all of a sudden started crawling up the tablecloth, starting at the bottom, and eventually ended up on the table. And of course, this was basically right over the seat I was in. I didn't notice it until it was on the table. Screams happened. This was while everyone was eating too. This was a big black grayish spider. It was not a tiny one. Honestly, it was the biggest spider I think I ever saw in my area. I am pretty sure everyone at the party was mortified. The 24th story. Was trying to go to sleep and felt a flutter against my arm. I flicked my arm, thinking it was a moth because I had seen one earlier. A few seconds later, I felt a flutter on the other arm and sat up. I could see something on the bed, so I grabbed my phone for a flashlight. There was an enormous wolf spider beside my pillow. I had knocked off a couple of legs when I jumped up. I'm terrified of spiders, so this was a nightmare of epic proportions. I was trying to be brave and not wake my husband, but I squeaked in terror as I tried to make myself get it, and he woke up and saved me. I just sat there, trying not to vomit and making sure it didn't have friends. It happened 3 weeks ago, and I still jump if something brushes against me. The 25th story. I was taking a shower at my old house a few summers ago when I had my first encounter with a giant house spider. I am originally from Southern California, but I relocated to the Pacific Northwest for college. I've always had arachnophobia, but I was used to black widows and that was about it. Nothing bigger than that. I did not know how big they could get here until a year into college. I lived with a bunch of guys, so I always locked the door when I used the bathroom. I took my time brushing my teeth and whatnot while I waited for the water to heat up. I didn't notice anything unusual. While I was shampooing, I saw the corner of the shower curtain move. I thought, oh my, that better not be what I think it is. And sure enough, some spiky-looking legs started crawling up the clear plastic shower curtain liner. I heard my boyfriend call my name from across the basement and then heard the lock jiggling. I think he was yelling at me about the locked door because he gave up and then crawled through the window. He's really skinny. He pulled the curtain back and I shrieked at him to make sure the spider wasn't anywhere near me before I ran into his bedroom and sobbed. My other roommates were downstairs at this point and gathered in the bathroom to investigate, while I buried myself in his sheets. The 26th story. When I was little, my uncle was using a smaller shovel to scrape up wet, rotting leaves and found a wolf spider so big that it barely fit on the shovel spade. It scared me, so he said he was going to show me how far he could catapult it. He was a dock worker, so it went a very good distance, but we could hear the thud. It sounded like he'd tossed a small apple. The 27th story. This happened to me while I was in the army. We were in a jungle on a training mission, and I ran through a huge spider web. I didn't think of anything at first, as I was brushing the cobwebs out of my face. Something crawled from my left cheek up to my helmet, and I realized there was a huge spider on my head. I panicked and turned to my buddy. I asked him to get rid of the spider, and he panicked. He swung his rifle butt at my head, trying to hit the spider. The spider jumped off. I got hit in the head with a swinging rifle, and my head hurt like hell for the rest of that mission. The 28th story. Saw a spider on the wall in my home office. Went into another room to grab a shoe. Couldn't find spider when I got back. Found it on the floor and tried to kill it with the shoe. Failed repeatedly due to it hiding between the carpet and the wall. It ran into the bundle of cables behind my desk. I sit there for a minute, then start crying because I can't do something as simple as kill a spider with a shoe. I go into my bedroom because With there being a spider, I no longer feel safe in my office. I sit there for a few minutes. Dog tries to comfort me. Dog wakes up GF in the process. GF notices me sitting at the foot of the bed in tears. She asks me what's wrong, and I tell her there's a spider in the office and I can't kill it. She walks into the office. Spider is on the same wall it was on originally, and she smashes it with the shoe and uses a tissue to get it off the wall. It's dead. I'm still upset, and my GF is probably thinking, can you please stop crying so I can go back to sleep? TLDR, can't kill spider, 'cause I'm useless. End up having a breakdown over it. Accidentally wake up GF, and she kills it. This thread will probably end up on my list of terrifying spider experiences. It's actually anxiety-inducing.
Подпишись на канал, поставь лайк и напиши в комментариях, что думаешь по поводу этих историй.